Hi and hello, watch fans. I'm Aloma Joseph, your friendly, I don't even know what I am because Rob asked me to do the intro, so let me call myself the friendly jeweler. I'm here with our friendly neighborhood watchmaker, Rob Nuts, who seems to believe he's Spider-Man since the last couple of weeks. I don't know if he banged his head on the ski slopes a few weeks ago, but we are very excited to record today's episode with Pietro Tomajer from the limited edition. I'm very excited to have you on the show, Pietro.
Thank you very much, Alan. It's a great honor and a pleasure. I'm a keen listener to the show, and I'm really happy to be here with you and Rob today.
So the honor and pleasure is all ours because since day one, when Rob and I came up with the idea of the real-time show, we also said that we want retailers on the show. Officially, I am a retailer, but we speak as little as possible about my retail business, only if it really adds value to the perspective of the story and the questioning. And I was adamant for our first retailer on this show, which is you. I wanted you and only you because I really look up to you. I think you're very innovative. You do something new, actually. So I'm very excited to have you here.
Thank you so much. And, coming from the conceiver and of the watch base, for example, and from the guy that actually introduced digital into retailing watches a long time ago from, Netherlands and worldwide, that means a lot. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pietro. Rob, just to check you're here, just say hi to our dear listeners.
Hi, Spider-Man checking in, just swinging in from the side there, yeah. I did bang my head. It's had a great effect on my personality, but not on my respect for Pietro and for you, Alon. Wow, look at that. So you got all of that kudos straight back at you because a lot of our listeners probably don't know what kind of a pivotal role you played in the early days of e-commerce in the watch industry, but that is something that I have always had a great deal of respect for as well. So look at that. Look at all the respect flying around. I'm not getting much of it directed, but I'm not a retailer. That's fine. That's okay. Although I do sell watches every so often, as we all know.
You should have the biggest respect as a watchmaker because I fall into that category of people talking a lot about watches, but then if you putting my hands on a watch movement or let alone any technical device, I would really struggle. So tons of respect to you, Rob.
Oh, my words. Oh, you did that very well. You must be a media professional. Talking of media professionals and watchmakers that you work with, yesterday I recorded with Dave Brailsford of Garrick, and we were just talking off air about how beautiful that ice blue S4 is. What's it been like for you to work with him?
Oh, yes. I'm really looking forward to that episode because we managed to get Dave on board for a live interview only last month after having, insisted for the last 2-3 years. And it was great to interact with him and have his perspective on these incredible things that are happening to Garrick. I remember the brand, if we could call it a brand. We're talking, of course, artisanal watchmaking. In the early days, when a little bit like us with the limited edition, we were kind of conceiving a concept. Never very sure about whether this concept would have worked. And God, it has worked for them, as Garrick now it's become really, really sought after and a big success in the niche we are talking about. And yes, we had the honor and the privilege to create a timepiece together, the one version of the S4, which comes with the ice blue dial. Actually, the ice blue color is reserved to us by Garrick for the S4, for the S5, and in the future, eventually, for the next collections that will come available. So, yeah, we have built a bond and a great relationship with Dave, for as difficult as it is, obviously not notoriously to create bonds with with Dave, being such the crazy character he is. And we love him for that.
That's amazing. And we were talking about all the pivotal things we've done, all three of us, and why we're sitting here, because the connecting factor is the huge passion for watchmaking we all have. So, Pietro, we need to wrap our heads around who you are, what the limited edition is. Because if I need to summarize, I don't even know where to start. Are you a media company? Are you a retailer? You are Italian, but you're in the UK. So for our dear listeners, to start off with, thelimitededition.co.uk. So .uk is the website. But Pietro is a media force as well. You can find him and his team on Instagram, thelimitededition.uk, and they're taking YouTube by storm today, and the handle is at the limited edition. So Pietro, please tell us, who are you? How did you get from Italy to England? Why do you love watches? And what is the limited edition?
Oh, why? Wow. I'm going to try to keep that nice and short. The limited edition, I realized talking to, clever people like yourself, Alan and Rob, we just had an offline conversation, and you said basically the limited edition is a bit of a retailer disguising as a media agency. And yes, I think that's what we are. But by mistake and by coincidence, it was never a grand plan to become what we are today. I have been in the industry as an insider, like all of you, especially Rob, when you were involved with brands in the past. Enormous, for example, I used to be the guy for the Richmond Group, for Girard-Perregaux, for Graham Watches later on, to go around and to visit markets overseas, Middle East, Eastern Europe, Asia Pacific area, and try to explain what independent niche watchmaking was all about. And I was trying to convince retailers like Alan to take a chance on smaller brands, on the independents, especially starting from when I was at Girard-Perregaux. And I had some luck, but not a lot of luck across the years. I have to admit, it was always a battle for getting retailers involved, giving you a chance and actually trusting you on the fact that one day these independents would have become a success that could have made possible for those retailers to actually not depend on the usual 5-6 brands that, regionally, depending on the area in the world, one or the other retailer would leverage on. So, yeah, you could be, I found you could be a good salesman once, but then if the brand was not performing the way the retailer was expecting, then you would have had a problem because, of course, because of the investment and because of the time that retailers were putting into trying to develop these brands. So I really critically analyzed why that was, that I knew there were collectors around the world loving independent watchmakers, but why were these collectors not necessarily appealing to the high street retailers to feed their passion for the independent artisanal watchmakers? And my reasoning was very basic. I just said, there is a magic, fantastic, great instrument, which is the internet, which is in 2014 was still seen as a place where to find just bargains on watches. Go on eBay, try to get your Speedmaster and your whatever you're looking for at a good price, and that's what the internet is about. I'm a keen guitar collectors and collector is a big word. I'm a guitar lover, and I know for a fact that it was the same in the guitar industry as well back in the days. Go online, try to find a bargain, and get yourself a nice Gibson Les Paul at a low price. And I thought, why could we not use on the other side the internet to try to create knowledge and to try to create awareness about these artisanal watchmakers that by definition they spend their time making watches. They have no time, or more and more these days, but back in the days, nearly 10 years ago, they had no time to go online and to make videos and to present their work, etc., etc. So I decided to become that one guy that would be once the retailer and the storyteller. And I didn't know whether it would have worked or not. And to be honest, in the first 2 or 3 years, we were selling nothing. So I had very patient friends, shareholders that gave me all the time in the world. And then at one point, things started to click. It was starting from 1 year before the pandemic. And then the pandemic has accelerated that because people had more time on their hands to listen to our stories. And to close this little introduction, we've always tried to keep a certain honesty and a certain straightforwardness, if you like, in all the contents that we create, because actually we are not a media company. We are not a professional media company. There's lots of flaws in what we do, but we have always decided to give the contents the priority. So what we talk about rather than how we portray the story. For as much as we try to improve, week in, week out, but we are, we're not even comparable to channels like, Swiss Watch Gang, or, the great guys in the media in our own industry. But it kind of works. So we talk to people that are interested in what we are talking about, rather than portraying a lifestyle that doesn't necessarily belong to us. And I'll close it there, because I could carry on for a long time.
Please do. We love to hear these stories. So, coming from the wholesale side of things, and I guess you grew up in Italy, you traveled the world for brands, as you told us. Unfortunately, you never visited me, because I would have loved to work with you.
That's a big, a big loss, because I've never been to Amsterdam other than a Schiphol airport, and I feel bad for that. And I need to tick that box as soon as possible.
So in writing, I already invited you, and hereby on air, I'll reiterate the open invitation to you. And Rob, I think we should do a touring the real time show meetups and events. I think it's very adamant that we need to do it. We had several requests.
I have this dream of us having one of those shipping containers as a mobile recording studio that we can just drive around the world and park outside retailers and brands and get people in there to, have a talk, have a drink, look at the watches. I think that'd be lovely.
I love that. And Rob, that's so good, because one of the reasons I've done all of, what I've done, and I think we all have in common, I was seeking for freedom in a way as well. So I wanted to be, I cherished and I love my time working for the groups, the brands, etc., etc. But I was kind of dreaming about, setting up something that at the same time would have made me free to do something different every day. And, very stereotypically, it has really changed my life. And what you're proposing now is the next level to that. So, yeah, I think it's a great idea.
Well, thanks for your kind words and support. And if we do get the real-time show on the road, we'll make sure to roll by your neck of the woods and have a cup of tea.
Brilliant. Yeah. I can't wait for that.
Talking of the neck of the woods, Pietro, where are you based in the UK? And do you actually have a high street boutique? Are you a pure player, which we call in the e-commerce world, somebody who only sells online? Please tell us a bit more about limited edition and the operations of it.
Yeah, so I am very incidentally based in the UK. I got married to a lovely British woman in 2008. We were living in Italy first and then in Switzerland. And then when we had the second child, we decided to move more where my wife was from and is from. And so therefore we moved to the UK in 2010. As I was still involved with the Graham operations, and I was taking care of the Middle East and Asia Pacific for Graham watches. And yes, Graham also very kindly let me develop the idea of the limited edition when I was still employed by them, which I will always be grateful for. And yeah, from then 2014, I was already in the UK. And when I set up the limited edition, London and the UK seemed to be just the best place to be, because believe it or not, but in the UK now, in London, there's no MB&F, there's no Urwerk, there's no, there's barely any Moser, for example. I think there's one door for Moser, and I'm just mentioning the most known, the most renowned, and successful independent watchmakers. You can imagine all the rest of the independent watchmaking ecosystem is completely absent here. So it kind of incidentally became the perfect platform for me to start telling my story. And the response was amazing, because back in the days, I used to think I'm a Middle East expert, I'm a Eastern Europe expert, and Asia Pacific expert. Of course, is a big word, but you know what I mean. So if I start something on my own, all these contacts, clients, etc., hopefully they will follow us, and that will be our target audience, if you like. But not at all. The moment we started being based in the UK and telling the stories related to where we are as well. We're based in Leicester, which is in the middle of England, which is logistically a great place to be, and also cost-wise. It doesn't have the London, pressure. But also we have a presence in London where we meet our collectors, we organize events, we invite every couple of months a different independent watchmaker and our collectors, and both local UK-based collectors and international collectors, they like making the the journey and the effort to come and see us in order to meet the watchmakers. And so we kind of, you know how it works, Alan. You start with your idea, and then as you navigate, you kind of adjust your business model depending on the circumstances and the cards that are played on your table. And that was exactly our case. I don't give myself much credit besides the credit of having been able to have a very small ego and being happy to be flexible on a daily basis and adapt whatever we were doing to try to do what? To bring value to watch collectors. If I'm a watch collector and I go to the four corners of the world and I can't find the watchmaker I'm really passionate about for whatever reason, but if I'm into Moser that I was mentioning before, but now, talking of other watchmakers, very successful today, Kudoke, Chapek, Laurent Ferrier, Chaikin, we've been a big retailer for Chaikin across the years. And I can't find it anywhere. I would gladly, go to London every weekend and see Pietro and see if I can meet one of these watchmakers, spend some time together. And you know what? When I make finally the decision to buy a timepiece from an independent, I'm gonna give Pietro a little bit of a payback for putting that effort on the table for me to be exposed to the watchmakers, and so then I'll buy from Pietro, because mind that most of these watchmakers, they sell directly, they sell to other retailers, etc., etc. So the battle is always on what we give first to collectors before we even expect collectors to eventually come back to us with a decision of purchasing a watch.
That's an amazing journey, and thank you for sharing. And we even have more in common. Not only do we like the same watches and watchmakers, but also same women, because my wife is also English. So, I'm quite sure there is a nice friendship being forged right here. It's very cool how hybrid and agile you are, and you've mentioned that you had friends supporting you. In all your communications, you're the face of the company, but you always write modestly co-founder. How big is the operation today?
I started in 2014 and I was on my own in my room at home. And with only my wife. Since you mentioned your wife, I'll mention again my wife, because she was absolutely incredible in encouraging me to take a risk, because I'm not a risk taker as a person in general. But that's how I started. And then today we are a group of 15 people, basically, at the limited edition. So we have 7 people sitting here where I'm sitting now in Leicestershire. And then there is another equivalent number of people sitting, as freelancers around the world, really, because some UK-based, some Italy-based, Ireland, our editor, Johnny, that I want to mention, because from the beginning, in the perspective of giving to collectors before even expecting to receive anything from collectors, we decided that if we were going to set up an e-commerce, the minimum we could have done was to review every single watch that was going on the e-commerce. So doing in-depth reviews like, Monochrome or Fratello was not viable, if you like. But Johnny's been the one ensuring that on every watch there is our little take on that watch, in the form of a short review that is spontaneous, it's quite direct, it's quite straightforward, and it's quite honest as far as I see it. So 15 in total now, and with a very inclusive mindset like you guys are having, of including whoever is passionate about independent watchmaking to help us sending contents out there. I have even done, contents with other retailers, with, for example, Laurent Picciotto, who's a role model for me, for doing what he's doing and for starting what he's now doing in the 80s, So I think inclusiveness has been paying off, because he helped creating an ecosystem for independents that wasn't there. And I know that now the independents are very successful. Everybody, is jumping on board, and, any retailer would know now that there are some independents that are very, very viable, or even commercially. But I remember very clearly that in 2014, with the exception of Max, Eduard, Gronefeld, perhaps Urwerk at very early days, were still vastly underrated. And I came too late for these successful watchmakers. So I had to start with those that were not successful at the time. And we kind of accompanied them on a journey. And the first four that actually decided to trust us were Graham, as I said before. There was Custos as well, just because a friend was working at Custos and he thought it was a good idea, whatever I was trying to implement. And then Konstantin Jakin, that changed our destiny. And Andrea Streller, which was very instrumental for us to have a certain respect from the outset, basically.
That's amazing. Amazing journey. Congratulations. And you're creeping up to your 10th anniversary. And I'm so happy to hear you also mentioning and recognizing our inclusiveness. And I've recognized that in you. And that's why I wanted you as the first retailer on our show. You've referred to Lolo, the founder and owner of Chrono Passion in Paris. And definitely he's a role model for me as well. And I even go back because I'm second generation retailer. Unfortunately, the Dutch culture in watchmaking was very humble and minimalistic. And I say this in an elegant way. Call it non-existent up until, let's say, a decade ago. And we're still not there. I grew up going to Antwerp, seeing Gino Sukrovic, late Gino Sukrovic, may he rest in peace, in Antwerp and promoting the indies. And I remember seeing the Vianney Halter, the Antiqua, for the first time as a kid.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, and that sparked the independence in me and the passion for steampunk, and then FP Journe and etc. And then visiting to London, obviously I had to visit Marcus. The first time I've ever seen MBNFs and Gribble Falsey and etc. If I haven't seen in Basel. Growing up in the Netherlands, I had the honor to meet Mr. Van der Klauw.
Oh, wow.
So for me, you are literally the 2.0, because I don't think that independent ecosystem or platforms in retail or even in media have evolved to 3.0. So you are the embodiment of 2.0, in my humble opinion. So compliments to you. Now, you call yourself the limited edition, but I think your title doesn't encompass everything you do. You focus on independence. You said that before. So I'm very curious, how do you go about in curating who you want to link up with? So I've scrolled through your brand list. I literally do not spot one brand that is owned by a group.
There is one.
There's one? Which one?
Yes. It's the exception that confirms the rule, as we say. It would be Arnold & Son, actually, that is owned by Citizen, technically. But obviously that's something that happened along the way.
Yeah.
But they operate very much like an independent, and I have a very good relationship. And I was happy to make an exception in that case.
So very interesting. So how do you go about with these rules and the exceptions? So let's say Ulysse Dardenne and Gérard Perregaux, your old love. We can call it that way, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Gérard Perregaux is the brand, is the reason why I like watches for a start. So it's as simple as that.
So they weren't independent for a long time. They started in the 80s coming back as an independent. They got bought by the Kering Group, So Wind and then Kering. They're independent now. Would you take them on board now because they're independent?
So, yes. So to go back to your broader question, I am very lucky, again, to have a pool of shareholders that are friends and they completely got our idea since the beginning. So I am very free in the curation of our site. Of course, when we were working with Moser, when we were targeting to work with MBNF, the idea was to try to start with the strong independence. But then for whatever reason, it didn't happen because they were already too developed for us, where we were very small at the time. So we changed the editorial line straight away. We said, listen, our main mission is to develop independent watchmaking. And like in music, as I said, I'm a big music fan, play the guitar, and I was always into niche rock music. if we can create an environment where if you're interested laterally or directly into the independence, you can actually get inspired and you don't necessarily have the same experience that you would have. And there's no criticism in this because I know why. If you're a high street retailer, you have to streamline. But normally, if you visit a high street retailer, you'll have a selection of 5, 6, 10 brands, 15, a bit more if you have a big, store in New York City or in LA, but still confined to the idea that these will be the brands that will be pushed when you enter the door because they've invested in stock. They need to push those brands. And obviously they wouldn't have time to have a larger discussion about the idea of independent watchmaking and even promote brands that they're not selling anything of. So in our curation, we have brands that are successful for us, some others that are, mildly successful, and some others that we haven't managed to sell anything. But we do like it, basically. We do like them. We believe they belong to this environment of independent artisanal watchmaking for a reason or another. And they help our narrative of creating a certain culture around independent watchmaking without being necessarily linked or strangled by the idea that if we're not selling, if it's not commercially viable for us, no, we're not going to do it. Because actually, rather than a limit, this has been a possibility for us because I can go out there, talk about any brand, and I have zero pressure about, from nobody, nor internally by the means of how commercially viable a brand is, nor, how can I say, externally from people saying, why are you talking about that brand that is not in your store, So, yeah, the curation is very, very free. We have tried to organize it in 2 big categories. One is independent brands and one is master watchmakers, because I do recognize there is a big difference between watchmakers. The brands are a different entity, different animal to the solo watchmakers who are the ones that really inspire us, in our passion big time. And Alan, I'm so happy you mentioned Vienney Alter because my Grail watch, when I started this, I said, the Deep Space by Vienney Alter was the piece that for me, was a bit of a iconic to what we wanted to achieve. And I said, the day we will be able to sell one of those, it means that there was something, in our concept. And thank God that happened as well. So it was a bit of revelation kind of moment that we had along the way. But yes, I don't know if I answered your question. So we curate with the maximum freedom. We have all the independents. They know now when they launch their new brand, their new timepiece, they come to us, they talk to us and they say, do you think you would want to feature it? If yes, how? And if no, why? And so we have, at the moment, I have 10 watchmakers on my list that I know we're kind of, trying to understand if they can fit on the platform. And I'm that keen interest that we have, regardless of the commercial viability, is what keeps us alive. Because then when I go online and I talk with people like yourself or with Johnny, when we do our weekly broadcasts on YouTube or on Instagram, etc., we always have something fresh to talk about, something new. And we can always gauge the interest that collectors may have about a watchmaker that we're not maybe entirely sure about and we're thinking about, and then understand through that whether we could find a space on the platform for them. But yes, the media part of what we do is becoming really, really big, because when we take any watchmaker on board, we'd like to give them the space that they deserve. And it's not easy to create content every day, as you know very well. But I recognized a long time ago that was our key to make us different to what a normal retailer could do.
Can you tell me 1 or 2 brands that you've identified, that you've been following, that you would love to work with, that maybe you haven't approached yet or haven't had a chance to meet in person?
Yes. So there is one we've been chatting with recently, which is Junge from Dresden, from Germany. They came out recently with a debut watch. We have covered on Instagram, and we're talking to them to try to see if we can bring them on the platform, because there is a real, and Rob, you will know how It's ironic, but we all know that German watchmaking, it comes as a branch, more or less, of British watchmaking historically. I mean, we could discuss for ages about this, but I think you see what I mean. Whereas now, because of the strong development of German watchmaking, the new wave of British watchmaking is actually coming back with a lot of links from Germany. I mean, there is Felipe Pikulik that this week released a homage to Harrison, John Harrison, for example. We released with Kudoke a British heritage version tribute watch of the K2 as well. So we like connecting all these dots. So Junge is a very promising pair of independent watchmakers that we would love to cover. And the second one, just to give you a couple, we would really love to integrate a Japanese watchmaker, because this is a big thing. But I totally believe that now watchmaking, yes, Switzerland is still the perfect ecosystem to be a watchmaker, but it's something that is spreading very, very fast all around the world. And one of the big stories that we like to tell is how much of great watchmaking you can find all over the world these days. And we like to be ambassadors for promoting that.
That's very interesting. I don't know if you know this, but I live in Dresden, so I'm only about 5 minutes away from where Junge is right now as a factory. So I might pop around and have a look through their window, see what I can see, because it looks pretty interesting.
I was listening to one of the last episodes when you were talking about your research for a red bar or a bar in general in Dresden, to be able to set up a red bar group over there. So how are you doing with that research, by the way?
Well, I've done my due diligence. Let's put it that way. I've been around quite a few of the bars, but I'm not sure I can remember how to get back to any of them. So it's a work in progress, but I'll let you know.
So if I come down to Dresden, can I help you with your due diligence? It'll be a great pleasure.
Anytime. I love doing research for the show and for Red Bar. Yeah, so please do.
Brilliant.
So, Pietro, what I love is the fact that you want it to be free and you feel that freedom. And I also noticed you guys don't only sell new as an authorized dealer, you also make collabs, which is amazing, but also sell pre-owned. Do you have a criteria there what pre-owned you will or won't accept to sell?
Yes. Again, in the perspective of giving value to our collectors, basically we let our collectors, and now we're talking about more or less 1,000 individuals around the world, we let them promote their own pre-owned pieces on our platform. So it's as simple as that. We'll have a new function coming up soon where the collectors will be able to actually load up their own collection on our website, and on demand we can make those watches live available on our website, as we are trying to create a curated and safe pre-owned, secondary small store on our limited edition website. So, and those at the moment, they come live next to our own inventory. So if you go on the inventory page on our website, you see a mix between pre-owned pieces that come from our collectors' collections. And the key for me is that I know them personally and individually, so I can trust them 100% on the origin, the quality, and the all the certification that goes with it for every single timepiece. So it's again an additional kind of protection that we try to give. Alongside our own inventory, when we started, we didn't have any inventory because we started with a £80,000 investment in 2014, and that was it. That's where we started from. So inventory was not something that we were going to try to flatter watchmakers with promises about. And but now, yes, we do have our own inventory, and it's all there available, for watch lovers to scroll through.
That's actually a very cool feature and very innovative. So kudos to you. Going to the collabs, would you please mention some collabs that are still available, if they are available and not sold out immediately?
Yeah, so thanks for this question, because another thing that I realized across these last 8 years was the research of hype that unfortunately has become slightly overwhelming in our industry, to say the least. And I was actually measuring and understanding that it was becoming annoying for many of our collectors, or at least those that talk to us, So obviously I have no pretension to speak for the whole of the industry. But very quickly I understood, if I'm going to do collabs, I'm always going to take that tiny amount of risk to make sure that the watches are available for a reasonable amount of time for people to do their researches, to enjoy their researches, and not to feel necessarily forced to wake up at night with 4 credit cards available and try to select the one that is not going to send you an OTP, because that would mean that you would lose priority, against some other collectors around the world. And all of this became so stressful for so many of them that I never wanted to drag them into that kind of experience. So all of this to say that our collaborations, normally we give plenty of notice in advance. We leak on purpose, images, teasers, etc. But we do launches that are normally quite long, a week, a couple of weeks, so people can actually enjoy. And why do we like watches? We like watches because we like the pleasure is also in creating, in nurturing our knowledge, and in researching, and in changing our mind, and still having the possibility to come back on a bad decision that we may have made. And I have kind of internalized all of that because I think we get it now. So rather than issuing an edition of 20 pieces of a brand that I know for a fact that has a potential to sell 40, for example, and try to do it overnight so that the day after I can go on Instagram and just feed my ego and say, oh yeah, this was sold out in 3 minutes. This was sold out in 10 minutes. How good are we? I was never interested in that. And we try to avoid that. So big introduction to say what is to say that some of our limited editions collaborations are still actually available. Some others have gone sold out. Some others, pretty quickly as well. But as we learn along the way, for example, the 3 last collaborations we launched, the one with British watchmaker James Lamb, the one with Singer Reimagined, and the one with Schwartz Etienne are actually still technically available because we launched a quantity of watches that is superior to what we sold in the last year for each and every single watchmaker I'm talking about. Because again, we're not a media, we're not chasing hype, we are a retailer. We want people to enjoy buying watches from us in their own time. And then it's up to us to find the financial viability with brands to make that possible so that the watches are actually available and we are not actually strangled by the idea that if we don't sell them overnight, we look like losers or we can't honor our commitment to the brand.
That is truly heartening to hear. So many of the projects I've been involved with when it comes to limited pieces are focused entirely on the rapidity of the sellout. How quickly can you get rid of that stock? How much can you brag about it on Instagram? And while, yes, it does stoke one's ego and make you feel pretty good and accomplished, I always left those projects thinking, what did we leave undone? How many people did we annoy? In some cases, it seemed we annoyed far more people than were able to buy the watch. In some cases, hundreds, possibly thousands of people would have bought watches that were available in very small quantities. And so I started to shift my position and I have reevaluated this glory of FOMO. I was never a fan of it myself anyway, and I suffered it as a consumer on more than one occasion, but I now am staunchly in support of annual editions, actually. That's where I came down. I think something should be limited. I think a brand should be allowed to know how many pieces of a certain model it has to produce in a certain amount of time so it can plan effectively and so it can give relatively accurate projections of delivery dates and whatnot and take care of its quality control in a responsible and unpressured manner. But I think if you make a watch available for a significant period of time, but then you make quite clear that it won't be made again thereafter, but put no actual cap on the limitation, it's a nice, responsible, and fair way to do it. What do you think about that strategy?
So, yeah, I totally agree with you, Rob. I think it's a very fine line. We all know, and hopefully if we have done our job to explain what independent watchmaking is all about, we all know that we're talking about limited quantities. We all know how precious this incredible devices are. And we all know that we couldn't justify huge quantities because that would be seen as the greed of trying to sell more than just in case. If we can sell 500, 1,000, would we actually do it? I think the truth is, like you say, in the middle, to find that right formula. And again, I can only speak for the audience that actually actively follow us, and I learn from them every day. And I think the right formula for us is, as I said, if I have in mind the yearly quantity that we could potentially sell on a particular model, then I know that I can gauge my, the total amount of pieces I'm going to produce on a collaboration around that number. And that should give us plenty of time to launch, to tell a story, to retell a story, to let the story live, for a longer time than just overnight and just, then again, going out there with our egos and saying, sold out, sold out. So annual editions, limited editions, I think it's for as long as it is proportioned to the potential that the brand has and the perception that the brand has. For example, with the Kudoke K2 British Heritage, we launched a quantity that was never, it was 30 pieces. It looked exaggerated, but at the beginning we started to think about 10, and then we said 20, and then it came to just saying, okay, how many Kudokes can we actually sell in a year? Based on our experience, and we believed and we agreed with Kudoke that 30 should have been a good number to cover the whole of the year. And in that case, we were wrong, because actually those 30 pieces were sold in a month and a half. But again, I wasn't worried because we gave plenty of information out there, and a month and a half, actually, compared to other launches, is actually a pretty good time to have a good experience and make an educated decision. So, short answer to your question is I don't know what the magic number is every time, but I just try to base it on common sense and on the feedback we get from collectors. And I have the goodwill from brands, because brands, for what we do for them, they're not there just to sell us another watch or to try to sell to Pietro 10 more watches, 15 more. Let's try to push him to 20. So he's gonna financially, cover this. And then if he sells, he sells. If he doesn't, it's his problem. We never are in that situation. So we find, brands are very cooperative in how we structure the launches, so that we are not under the pressure of, if it doesn't work well, we need to eat up the stock. And on the other side, collectors, which is more important, are not in a situation where, Pietro will try to sell them a watch every day just because it's a fantastic idea. It's a great release. And for whatever reason it is, they need the time to mull over it.
That's the balance that you want to strike, where you can actually have a deal in place with the maker that doesn't hamstring you into having to perform any kind of dark arts in the shadows to get rid of those watches or to put too much pressure on your clientele. Very, very nice to hear indeed. So what can we look forward to seeing from you in the very near future?
Where do I start? Well, first of all, I'm really looking forward to Watches and Wonders. I'll spend most of my time, I guess, at the AHCI showcase at the Iceberg in Geneva. So if any of your listeners are around, it'd be nice to, as it works over there, basically people have drinks, talk to the watchmakers, and it's a great opportunity to actually spend time with them. And we are one of the official sponsors. I'm very proud of that, of the AHCI, which, for those that are not familiar with, is obviously the most important association of independent watchmakers that started in 1984 from the idea coming from Sven Andersen and Vincent Calabrese. Sven Andersen being the obviously legendary Danish-Swiss watchmaker, and Vincent Calabrese, Italian-Swiss watchmaker, who was the inventor of the Golden Bridge the Golden Bridge for Coron watches. Anyways, this association has come a long way, and now includes a number of older and fresh and young watchmakers. And it's, for me, the place to go and the place to be in Geneva. And I'm not saying that because obviously we are a partner, because it's just we just support the association, but we have no commercial interests related to the association. Also, I will be visiting Time to Watches. I see Time to Watches as a great laboratory and a workshop of the latest crazy trends. So I want to go there definitely. And yeah, finally, I'll be at Watches and Wonders as well, where a few of our independents will be represented at the Carré des Horlogers. And that will be the place where we will discuss, the planning for next year. Possibly some new collaborations. We've been very busy on that side, so I think we're gonna be quiet for the next few months. Also, because like Alan said, we are approaching in 2025, because it's 2015 when we actually went online officially. So we're gonna it's basically 2025 that will be our 10th anniversary, and we have a couple of big collaborations happening for that. One that I can anticipate for this year is the second coming from the Ophion collaboration. So the first one was the Guild Spectre 40 pieces limited edition that we launched together with the horophile Amr Sin. Great character and great personality in the world of watchmaking. So passionate about independence as well. The first edition was really great. We loved developing it together and with Ophion, for the exact reason, Rob, you mentioned before. Ophion, again, we wanted to launch 10 pieces, then 20 pieces, then we went to 40, which seemed like an obscene number of pieces for how limited Ophion is. But yeah, we sold all of them, and we had 70 more people keen to eventually for a second edition. So we are seriously considering that. And actually, it's going to happen before the end of this year. And it gives us the opportunity to push also affordable independent watchmaking, which was always one of our big things. We wanted to, when I was playing guitar when I was 15, I could never ever afford, a Gibson Les Paul at the time, or even a Stratocaster, a Mexican Stratocaster, if you want, in those days. But there were other ways to nurture the passion, and other guitar brands that were quirky, were interesting for other reasons. And the same in independent watchmaking. I say there is a great watch for every wallet, if you like, for every phase of your financial life. And so Ophion came very, very useful to express that concept when you look at what Ophion can offer in terms of, the movement, the dials, the case, all the details on the watch, and the price point, which is really, really competitive. So this was a project that we were really attached to.
That's amazing. I can't wait to see that watch in less than 2 years. For our dear listeners, Ophion is spelled Ophion if you want to Google it, or just go to the limitededition.co.uk. Pietro, the funny thing is I don't do market research for competitors, because I think I only have colleagues, and I do believe in the ecosystem. And the funny thing is, you came on my radar not so much that I spotted you as a retailer. I first thought you were even a blogger, because I remember you coming on my physical radar very vividly. It was with the Disruptors show that you did with the legendary Jean-Claude Biver. Could you talk us through how you came up with the idea, how you linked up with JCB, and continue also to your second show, The Protagonist?
Yes, thank you, Alan. Yeah, that was unexpected for me as well, because I had never met Jean-Claude Biver before in person, and I didn't know Jean-Claude Biver. We had never been in touch. Of course, we all know who Jean-Claude Biver is, but certainly he didn't know who I was. I can give you that for certain. A common friend, Sophie, who I thank again, Sophie Rindler, who was involved with the brand Tocker at the time, Tocker Watches. She put me in touch with Jean-Claude, and we decided to kind of, Jean-Claude being a great giver, a great giving person, he decided to kind of utilize our channel to talk about his passions, his philosophy, his idea of what watchmaking should be all about. And then with a very free and large agenda. We touched upon so many different aspects of watchmaking as an analogy always to life and to business life and to real life, if you like. So these little lives that are still quite niche, you find them on YouTube mainly. We did them on Instagram, where everything disappears very fast, and then we felt compelled to actually publish them on YouTube, so you can still find them. And we treat all sorts of topics, during the pandemic, after the pandemic, and I'm actually really proud because there was no agenda related to cover any brand in particular or to promote any project, from our side or from Jean-Claude's side. Jean-Claude is launching his new brand with his own son. They're going to launch it in Geneva before Watches and Wonders. And that was something he was working on at the time, but it was never part of the agenda to promote anything specifically. And so it's just two people with two very different pathways talking about things that they may or may not have in common. For me, there was just a small, entrepreneur trying to get a small venture to work out the best that I could, being confronted and being put together one of the absolute legends of our industry, because, it's quite simple for the way I look at watchmaking. If Jean-Claude Biver hadn't made a stand at the end of the 70s, in favor of Blancpain, which was the brand he was involved with, when he famously said, Blancpain never made a quartz watch and never will do, or something on those lines anyway. When the whole world was jumping on the quartz wagon at the time, and mechanical watchmaking nearly got extinct, with even some famous movement manufacturers, moving to China. For example, if we look at the story of Seagull movement makers, for instance, just to give an example, because I know you had a recent episode as well with Richard from Studio Underdog, and it made me think about that. Yeah, having the opportunity to actually chat and pick his brain publicly, the way we've done, and then answering Q&A, like you do, was a great formative experience, to say the least. And I consider myself very lucky to have been able to do that.
That's amazing. And you're so right that he's a giver. He graced us with the honor to be the first ever person to be interviewed on a show, which is the Thursdays. So Tuesday, we always do Q&As. Thursdays, we always do interviews like this. So he is really amazing. We are going to meet him and his son on, I believe, March 30th, Rob and I. So we're very curious to see what he's going to launch. Are you guys going to sell JCB watches, Pietro?
So we are getting some of the right people to come and look at the watch. But again, I'm very honest in saying that we have no agenda with Jean-Claude. So he's a giver. So we're going to give on our side, just expose the right people to his new creations and see what happens, basically. That's the true story. We haven't even talked about being retailers or, the way we should call ourselves in regards to this new brand that is launching. It's just, I'm going to keep it the same. Basically, I'm going to meet Jean-Claude with some of the right people and see what happens, basically.
That's amazing. And that's how it should be. And that's how it used to be in the watchmaking industry, and definitely the diamond industry, which is still like that. So it's music to my ears. Pietro, I know you're very busy, but I have so many more questions for you, but maybe I want to round it up going quickly to your second show and link a devil's advocate question to the title of that show. So the protagonist. Tell us a bit more about that. And the bonus question is, who is the antagonist in that case for you?
So the protagonist was one of the first series that we have launched on Instagram, because we have done everything on Instagram up until this year, where we are trying humbly to develop the YouTube a little bit more, because we find it a cleaner environment where we can actually quietly project our contents in a better way. The protagonist came from a very simple idea, for as much as I don't mind myself and my voice and my face, which I had to put out there to create that bond with our audience. I think what our audience really is interested in is to see those protagonists of the passion that move our collectors. So the watchmakers. So the protagonists were and are the watchmakers or the CEOs of those independent brands that animate and our website and our passion. So we have interviewed dozens of watchmakers, sometimes multiple times, with the idea of getting our collectors to see for the first, some of them, like you mentioned, Dave, Dave from Garrick, some of them had never seen Dave before in an interview. If you go on YouTube, you can hardly see Dave, from Garrick talking about watchmaking. We've done it with Ludovic Baloir, and it was very difficult to find a content in English with Ludovic Baloir. So I did obviously a direct translation from French to English with him live on Instagram, and then we recorded this and put it on YouTube, so everything is still available there. Andrea Strella, very difficult to find contents about Andrea Strella. V&A Alter a couple of times. Max graced us with his presence in the very first episode, a very first broadcast that we did back in 2016, I want to say. 16 or 17 maybe 17. So yeah, the idea was to give voice to the real interesting guys, because I'm a facilitator. I'm somebody in the middle to try to make things happen. Talking again about my love for guitars, I love hearing from the makers. I love hearing from the people playing those incredible instruments, rather than only just the retailer in the middle, if you see what I mean. So yes, the protagonist has now become the Independents, and the Independents is on YouTube, and it's a very simple format where also you guys are invited to join if you'll have the time in the future. So we can share also a bit more of your background and Rob's background as a watchmaker as well. It would be an absolute pleasure.
That would be our pleasure, absolutely. And what a lovely moment to round off the show. Pietro, thank you for your time. It's been a great hour of chat and recording and getting an insight into what you do. And I hope we get you back on the show in the future, but we'll gladly be guests on yours in the meantime. I am sure our audience will have many questions for you and would like to get in touch. And if they would like that, they can do so via the usual channels. You can find me on Instagram at RobNuds, RobNudds. You can find Alon there at ALONBENJOSEPH. Or you can contact us via email at either rob@therealtime.show or alon@therealtime.show. We will be back next week with another Q&A session and another interview with one of watchmaking's leading lights. Until then, stay safe and keep on ticking.